The family of a local teenager says she never would have left home without calling.
Just praying for the best. I want my daughter home, man. And if she can't come home, I just want to know where she's at.
These posters around the towns of Livermore and Jay beg anyone with information to come forward. Posters that Richard puts up every spring, never losing hope.
Tell me what happened to my daughter. Just look me in the eyes so I can see her.
An arrest in a nearly 4-decade-old cold case. Thanks to cutting-edge DNA technology, the arrest happening exactly 39 years to the day
when Parabon Nanolabs used that sample to create 3D models of the suspected killer's face.
It's heartbreaking. We miss her, and we're going to find her. We're going to keep looking till we do.
It's like a never-ending nightmare. It doesn't end. It keeps returning and coming back.
Before we get started on tonight's case, just wanted to give you an update on our last podcast, The Boys on the Track. Lauren Novak, brother of Kenny Novak, one of the boys killed on the tracks, started a Facebook group a few years ago called Searching for Answers, the 1970 deaths of 3 Cape Breton youths in Maine. After our podcast, the group doubled in size to 628 members now.
We also started a petition to get the case reopened by the state police. We're currently at 406 signatures.
We'll post a link on our page so you too can sign. What if I told you a 28-year-old man disappeared without a trace April 24th, 2004 from Belfast, Maine?
What if I told you multiple eyewitnesses said he was acting delusional and stated bad men were after him?
What if I said some people believe there are police cover-up and tampering with evidence?
And what if I told you that a son confessed to his father about what happened, but it was not investigated even when the father went on record telling the story?
16 years later, and they're still looking for Jeremy Ted Alex.
Tonight we're speaking with Amanda Curry, a cold case and mysteries researcher from Maine who's done some extensive investigating into this case just because of how close to home it is for her and also how bizarre it is.
Hello?
Hey, Amanda.
Hello.
Hey, how's it going?
Hey, I'm here with Jeff. I think you met him before, haven't you?
Maybe. I'm not sure. Probably. At some event.
At one of the Parafests, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Oh, this is super cool because I have done a lot of research, but I don't know. It looks like you've kind of seen a lot of the same stuff that I have, so.
Right.
It's, I don't know. It's kind of confused. I don't know what to believe, or who to believe, but we'll get into it, I guess.
Yeah, it gets kind of dark, I think, so.
Yeah.
If you want to start off by, tell us who you are and what your connection is to the case.
Okay. So my name is Amanda Curry, and I have a journalism background, worked in media for about 8 years. And during my time in media, I did a lot of research on just all things Maine related. And I'm super interested in all things Maine related. And of course, when you come across things like missing people in the state that you live in, it's a little concerning because these are people just like you and I that have families and people that miss them, I'm sure. So it's kind of shocking that some people are just never found. And one that really piqued my interest when doing some research was Jeremy Alex, because I spent a lot of time in the Belfast area, Northport, all of the areas that that Jeremy spent his last year or so in, and it's kind of shocking to know that the Pleasant folks in that area, are still at a loss for what happened to this guy. So
it must be kind of surreal because you can picture all these places that you hear about, right?
Yeah, and these are places that I generally would go to relax, or people come to vacation. It's a huge destination in the summer for people just looking to get away, the coastal experience, really quaint, cute little town. So to hear that someone could be missing is shocking.
And in a state like Maine too, right, where there's really not a ton of people, it's usually pretty pleasant, peaceful place where people just, so if someone goes missing, it's like, how does that even happen in a place like this?
Yeah, and everyone knows everyone, so how does someone not know where he is? It's kind of, yeah, it's hard to believe. So my interest was definitely piqued. And then, of course, the case was featured on an episode of Disappeared on the ID channel, and that I saw that, and that was when I really got more interested in what was really going on.
Yeah, I've seen that too. It's pretty interesting for sure.
It is, yeah.
So can you just start us off with the story of Jeremy and maybe talk a little bit about what you understand of him and the type of person he was?
Yeah. So Jeremy Alex, another reason that I was really interested in him, he was about the same age that I was when I first started learning about him, around 28 years old. He went missing on April 24th, 2004. And this was a time, early spring, so snow shouldn't be a problem. But that also meant that it might make it harder to track him. From what I understand, he had an appointment to go possibly buy a moped that morning, and that was the last time he was seen. His girlfriend, who he lived with, saw him leave the house. They lived on Little Harbor Road in Northport, and again, a small little community. And he was seen, from what I understand, after that, only a couple times. And after he left the house, he started acting a little sporadic the last few times he was seen. One report says he was seen running across the road about 3 miles away from his house. And shortly after that, he was seen by someone who actually recognized him, his teacher. And that was about 5:30 in the afternoon, and that was very close to where his car was later found on the Pound Hill Road, right in Northport. And after that, very, very little was found of him. Mm-hmm. They found his car that was on the Pound Hill Road, and about 0.9 miles from that, they did find his wallet and ID, as the story goes, or possibly his money and ID, in a little cove called Saturday Cove. A really quaint, cute little place. Probably lots of beachcombers in that area. And some reports kind of vary, saying when the money was found. But it's, yeah.
To go back to the point of the moped sale, do you know if the guy that was selling the moped was ever interviewed and what he might have said?
From what I understand, the guy that had the moped for sale was never interviewed. I have looked so hard trying to find out if he even made it to that appointment. From what I understand, there's little or no record of anyone being interviewed about that. And you'd think that would be something that they could find an ad maybe for.
Right.
So, yeah,
do you know
that's something I've definitely looked into.
Do you know what time of day this was? Like, what time did his girlfriend last see him?
His girlfriend was kind of hesitant to give a lot of details at first, due to the fact that they were involved in some drug use. So her facts are a little iffy, but there's conflicting reports around noon and then 3 in the afternoon. So to be seen by his teacher around 5:20, 5:30 is, it gives you a kind of a time period. But again, it's a little up in the air.
So his teacher said that he came stumbling out of the woods and was kind of acting almost like a lunatic, right? Saying people are after him.
Yeah, and the person that saw him running across the road shortly before his teacher saw him said that he actually ran one way across the road and then changed directions and ran back towards what would be the direction of the cove.
Right.
And where his teacher saw him, there's, again, conflicting reports. Some say that the teacher's husband actually restrained him and he still got away. Other reports just say that they offered him help and he refused it, but he was clutching his money. From what I pretty much every report agrees that he had something in his hands, and so kind of strange that he was just running around with money in his hands. But yeah, he was claiming people were after him, something that his girlfriend confirmed he'd actually been saying for maybe a day. So a little strange, yeah.
Yeah. Now, did his girlfriend talk about, and she probably didn't, but did she ever say anything about any drug use that day, or what he might have taken to cause this delusion?
I've read some reports that said maybe a speedball, heroin, and cocaine, which can cause psychotic, just really strange behavior. Even if it's something that you've done before, it can be different every time, from what I understand. And there's also another report that Jeremy was involved in mushrooms, might have been selling them also, which would maybe make sense why he was saying people were after him, or something like that. But it's I've heard conflicting responses or conflicting reports. And his father even confirmed he knew that he did drugs, but did not say what they were.
Was there any history of mental illness in his background?
His father also did mention that he did, have some struggles growing up, but he also wasn't the type that would just disappear. He wouldn't take off on his own. He was described as a really caring young man, and he also had a lot of survival skills, from what I understand. So it's one of those things, if he was hallucinating and maybe got lost in the woods, he probably would have made it. He probably would have found his way out by now. But so just knowing that kind of narrows down things. But from what I understand, just kind of a genuine, hardworking young guy.
So when he went to go look at the moped, I assume he must have left with his van, right? How far away from his house was the van found?
The van was only found about 3 miles away from his house, and it's less than a mile from where his the money and his ID were found in Saturday Cove, which is kind of interesting to me.
Does anyone... I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. No, go ahead.
Was there any witnesses putting him in the van at all, in that location at all, that you know of?
Not that I know of. I've heard about some witnesses seeing his van, being there when his van was found. And there's some conflicting reports on that, which get kind of interesting when you get into maybe different conspiracies about what has happened. But it's that's all I know.
So who found his... I guess it was his ID and money. Do you know who that was?
That's another interesting story. If you've seen the Disappeared episode, they portray it as a police officer. They don't say who it was. Someone higher up in law enforcement, from what I understand, goes to visit a friend's house, and they had a bowl on their table that had stuff that they'd found on the beach, and lo and behold, there's Jeremy Alex's ID as well as some wads of cash. It seems strange that they wouldn't turn in an ID that they found on the beach, but it's maybe...
Yes,
right. I don't know.
Money, but why keep someone's ID? Right.
Right. That seems really strange to me. And then that was how it was portrayed on Disappeared. But I've also heard some different stories about maybe it was even on the news at one point. There was an image of his wallet and his cash on the news. So I can't find that news report anywhere, but
right. So that was when they were showing the van, right?
Yeah, and that's
so then mysteriously the wallet ends, or the ID and money ends up in the cove.
Right, and that's where I get a little confused, but that's where the intrigue is. And, there's got to be more to this story.
So yeah, you want to, I guess, let's dive into that a little bit. The whole possible cover-up idea or things that are going on.
Okay, I can offer a few theories. One of the most obvious theories is that he drowned, where his car was only found, less than a mile away from the cove where his money and his ID was found. But that's also something that's easy to plant, I think. Mm-hmm. There were a lot of rumors, of course, in a small town. There were rumors that he was shot. There was rumors that he was strangled. There was rumors he was beaten, thrown into a fire at a pit party. Lots of, just kind of, I think, bar stories. But one of the strangest things about this case is when you research missing persons, there's usually just a few articles here and there from the newspapers, maybe, an interview with the family. But with this case, there is someone who is really trying to bring some attention to this story, and it's really added an interesting twist to it all. There's this one man who's actually taken it as far as lawsuits and serving different law enforcement officers. The man's name is Bradley Williams, and he has a bunch of YouTube videos. And apparently he's related to one of the deputies of the Belfast police, the main investigative group that was looking for Jeremy Alex. And
that's Merle Reed, right? That he's related to?
That's Merle Reed, yeah. Some of the other allegations fall on Police Chief Mike McFadden, who the two names kind of come up quite a bit. The most interesting part is that they are they both have been involved in numerous different allegations, I guess, not just from this Bradley Williams, but they've been brought up on some kind of shady activity in the past. Of course, they've been cleared of everything, so everything's just an allegation at this point, but
right.
It is interesting.
So how does the band Fish figure into all this? I know they've been brought up.
Yeah, so that's one of the biggest claims from this Bradley Williams is that John Fishman of the band Fish has something to do. He's been involved with the deputy Merle Reed before, and the allegations kind of go a little. It was a little bizarre when I first read about it, but the allegations are against John Fishman for child molestation, flashing, that kind of stuff. And apparently this has all been covered up by the Belfast police, as alleged by Bradley Williams. And Bradley has gone as far as talking to numerous witnesses. He's taken it to the city council. He's been all over the place. And the most interesting part of this all, I think now, is that John Fishman is actually involved in city council type stuff currently. He's now on the inside.
Right. That's a lot of information.
Yeah, it's hard to break it all down. I can go into the video that Bradley Williams has with the alleged confession of the killing of Jeremy Alex.
Yeah, could you touch upon that? Now, who is that talking? And we'll play a snippet of it here after you're done talking.
Yeah. Okay, so there's one video on YouTube where Bradley Williams is interviewing David Linscott. David is a longtime resident of Belfast area, and he's also the father of David Linscott Jr., who you'll hear referenced a lot in the video. Lynn Scott Jr. was his son. He also calls him DJ, and he was actually murdered, shot in 2012, not too far from the Northport area, by some of the people that might have also been involved in Jeremy Alex's death, according to Lynn Scott. Lynn Scott it's kind of confusing listening to the audio. All you get is audio, and he makes mention to a date, July 4th, which is not when Jeremy Alex went missing. So I'm not exactly sure what he's referencing there, but a lot of the other information kind of does match up to some of the other claims. The other people that have been involved also do have kind of shady histories. So it does kind of all come together. David Lynn Scott says that he knows for a fact that Jeremy Alex was murdered over a debt, beaten to death, and buried off of White Orchard Road, which is near Mount Waldo, which is also an area where Merle Reed frequents, and Mike McFadden does have, or did have, a residence there as well.
Okay, old Philbrook. Cameron Philbrook.
Yep.
Stabbed Jeremy Alex.
He beat him to death.
Beat him to death.
On Waldo Mountain. My boy DJ and Brad Beaton, they heard it on the scanner over in Searport at Dave Hersham's party that Jeremy was running around in the woods delirious down in Northport.
No, okay.
And he went by one of his ex-teacher's house, and she see him, and she went out and tried to get him to come in, and he wouldn't. He kept on going.
Yeah, that's Jim
Well,
Monkel.
DJ and Brad went down there and got him and restrained him and took him back to the back Searsport Road, the 4th of July, 1986, I think.
Yeah.
And they kept him there until, I don't know who, Dennis Tripp, DJ, and Brad took him to Waldo Mountain. And then when he come to, Fred Barlow was talking to him. And Fred was trying to convince him to pay Cameron off the $8,000 or $9,000 he owed him. And he was trying to talk him into not ratting Cameron out. Cameron thought he was going to rat him out. Well, the money was over mushrooms that Jeremy was growing.
Yep, I knew all about that.
Yeah. And Jeremy came at Fred, and Fred had his hand on a rock, so he whacked him in the head with it. And when Jeremy fell on the ground, he kind of went into convulsions and shaking all over, I guess. Well, Fred runs up into the party, and Cameron was hiding right there in the woods. So he just went right down there and beat him to death, literally.
So
that body stayed there 2-3 years. Now, 2 years later, they tried to give me $3,000 to move that dead body. I wouldn't move it. I didn't know who it was then. I didn't know it was Jeremy. I didn't know my son was involved in it. And I wouldn't do it. So that they did. They moved the body. And I don't know that there's rumors they chipped it. The rumors they put it in a bog. I don't know what they really did with it. I do know they threw his license and some money off the Belfast Bridge that was found later.
Okay. Yeah, I heard about that too.
Yes. Yep.
So again, it all kind of does tie together.
Was any of that ever looked into? Did people actually take that seriously?
I believe that's one of the things that Bradley took to court, or at least to the council, and tried to, bring to everyone's attention. And from what I understand, he's not really taken seriously in any of this, unfortunately. It's a tough call to make.
They're almost treating Bradley like he's crazy or something, but imagine how nerve-wracking it is to
against the band Fish too. There, right? How did they play into that again? Like that's the part that kind of confused me. Is how are they actually related to the case?
The only thing that I think Bradley was really trying to get to was the fact that they're shady cops. I think that's what he was alleging, is that they've covered this stuff up, they've covered the molestation stuff up, and why wouldn't they cover up a murder of someone who did drugs, like, you know. It's kind of, I think that's where he was going with it, but it does get a little confusing, and it's one of those things I really want to be on Bradley's side, but they almost do convince me that he's crazy. So maybe they're just doing a really good job. It would be.
It's
What's
almost
that
like
saying? You might be crazy, but that doesn't mean they're not watching you.
Right.
Yeah, and even if he's crazy, at least look into it. It's more than anyone else is doing. You know, he's at least trying to find what happened to Jeremy Alex, and that's more than a lot of people are doing.
Absolutely. It's almost like when you have an argument with somebody and you know you're right, and they're telling you no, you're wrong, that you just get so worked up and so frustrated with, you know, like you're hitting your head against a wall, that you do kind of come off as maybe unstable.
Yeah, I just can't understand, even if Bradley is crazy, how could you hold on to something like this for this long? And you know, he's been kicked down so many times, and he's still going after it. So that makes, you know, gives me a little bit of hope that there might be something more to it.
Right. So with David Lynn Scott Jr.'s case, was the person who killed him ever found, or is that
they actually did find the guy that I looked a lot into the shooting of David Lynn Scott Jr. Because that was I know exactly where it happened. It's a place that I've driven by a million times to go to the beach. So it was kind of shocking to hear. I had no idea about that because the murderer did get off, pretty much without anything. So
was David Lynn Scott Sr., when he did his recording, confession or whatever, was that before or after Junior had been killed?
That was after he'd been killed, yeah.
Okay.
And unfortunately, we wouldn't be able to talk to Lynn Scott Sr. today. He's passed away as well. So that's kind of, it seems like that's the case with a lot of the witnesses, a lot of the people that were looking for Jeremy. A lot of them have either passed away or disappeared. And
what a coincidence.
Yeah, that's another reason that it's just a really intriguing story. It either way that it goes.
It seems very
unfortunately.
Some of the other stuff that we've talked about too, like the other cases that we've done, like that would make sense that people had passed away or something, because those were back in the 70s. But this was 16 years ago?
Yeah, it's 2004. It really wasn't that long ago, and a lot of the witnesses, there's I think 2 of the witnesses that were there when his car was found. Both of them have passed away, and they weren't that old. So I don't, it is kind of.
Do you know how they passed? Was it natural causes?
I don't. I did find their obituaries, but I don't know how they passed.
So it definitely is very plausible that this guy was on drugs, running around, thought people were chasing him, and for some reason took off towards the ocean and dove in the ocean. But
oh yeah,
and that's what they want you to believe, I think.
Right, and I think that's, like I said, it would be very easy to plant the money and his ID close to where his car was found. That's a very easy plant as far as I'm concerned. Another weird, it's one of those theories I'll entertain because we have no idea what happened to him. But there were a few claims that he was seen. One was that he was working at like a sawmill or a lumber yard in Jackman, Maine. And the guy looked just like Jeremy but didn't say much. And one of the theories is that if he had a bad drug experience, maybe he has some brain damage and doesn't know where he is. There's a lot of there are a few sightings and a lot of theories about those sightings. So I remain hopeful. Maybe he's still out there. My gut says he's not, but you can always be hopeful.
Right. Now, Bradley Williams claims that he was there when the van was being searched, and he says he saw them with the wallet, and that's part of his lawsuit, right?
Yes, and that's where reading some of the details about that, and even seeing some of the comments on that video, there were other witnesses. He actually had 2 people write to him in 2018, he said, that saw the wallet on the news in the hands of the officers that were on the news. So again, I can't find that clip anywhere, but it's definitely interesting.
Now, he also Williams states that there was a drive-by shooting at his residence, and that the police department refused to look into it.
I lost you a little bit.
He said that there was a drive-by shooting at his residence, Mr. Williams, and there was a store across the street that has video that would have showed what the vehicle was that did the shooting. But police are refusing to allow him to see the video, and told the owner of the store if they ever show him the video that they'd be charged with obstruction of justice. And that's in his lawsuit as well against the town. Because he contends that it was a police car.
I didn't know that.
Holy
interesting.
Cow.
Yeah, I'll read Williams asserts police refused to provide him with services, including investigation of a drive-by shooting at his residence and a robbery, according to court documents. That wasn't the one I read earlier, but basically he said that he believes it was a police car that drove by when the fires were shot in his house, and they never did an investigation.
Wow. Interesting. He also had a house fire, which I think that's either just a lot of bad luck or I don't know.
Right.
Or maybe they're out to get you.
We're not saying we believe Mr. Williams. Just to be clear. Belfast PD.
Don't burn my house down.
Yeah, from what I understand, John Fishman has a restraining order against him now and his wife.
Yep, I read that as well.
Yeah, so.
Do we know what?
I don't know how much further he can go.
Do we know what Jeremy's girlfriend is doing nowadays, or after the disappearance? Was she involved for the search at all? Do we know?
I think early on she was involved in the search. According to the episode of Disappeared, she was featured in that show, and so she was involved to that point. But trying to search her now, she's one of those people that I think by her own will has kind of just disappeared. So.
And I know his father
not too involved, and I was kind of sad to see it. His father's not super involved. He does have a charity in his name, but it's not super active, unfortunately.
Yeah, actually, I reached out to the page. I couldn't find his father on Facebook or a phone number for his father, but I did reach out to the Jeremy Alex Foundation page to see if someone would be willing to talk to us there as well, and never got a response. So I don't know if it's due to inactivity or if they're just not interested.
Yeah, I actually was thinking about donating, and there's like no way to donate that I could find. So it was I don't know if it's been a few years, quite a few years. So maybe it's one of those things they're just letting go, or maybe not enough people are donating anymore.
Yeah, I know that the Facebook page only had I think 250 people that even liked the page. So
yeah,
that might be the situation.
Yeah.
With the allegations against the police, what were they again? They were about covering up the fish thing, having the wallet, and potentially shooting up his house. Was there anything else that he'd accused the police of?
Oh man, I don't have anything. I know that there was more.
Supposedly, Jeremy was killed in the backyard of the sheriff or sheriff's cousin or something, right?
Yeah, that's one of the theories I've heard. Okay. I also heard he was killed by. You hear about the name Cameron Philbrick at all?
Yep.
Philbrook. Yeah, he's related to, I believe, McFadden.
Right.
And he seems to be the one that his name has been brought up multiple times as the possible killer. So yeah, could be on someone's property who would be good at hiding things.
Or not even, you don't have to hide. You can hide in plain sight when you have the police on your side.
Right.
Right. Oh yeah. And that's what David Linscott said. He said that the body was only about 15 feet from the tower on Mount Waldo up White Orchard Road, and I know exactly where that is. And then he also said that probably 3 or 4 years after he was killed, they did move the body, what was left of it. So.
And do you know where they supposedly moved it to?
No, that's not anything that that I know. I think that I've heard a bog or the bay, but that was
bog would be a really good way to get rid of someone.
What's that, Jeff? I'm sorry.
I just said a bog would be a really good way of getting rid of someone.
All right.
Oh yeah, and Mount Waldo's got a couple bogs on it. I've been all through that area.
Did he ever try to go up to that tower himself to check it out, or what kept him from going up to look for himself?
I believe in the video that Mr. Williams did, it did say, or David said that he had been in that area even when the body was being put there. So I think he seemed pretty matter of fact that he knew it was there. But again, that was never investigated, which seems really strange to me.
Right. Jeez.
Yeah.
Yeah, the whole thing is just a bizarre story, and then you add the cover-up in it, too.
Yeah.
Really interesting.
So it makes it's one of those cases, sometimes I feel like it's definitely going to be solved. It's totally solvable. And this is one I feel like it's just been tampered with way too much.
Right.
From the get-go, it sounds like things weren't done correctly. And all of his van, his house has been sold. Everything it's gone now. So unfortunately, it's the likelihood of finding him or finding out what happened, I think, is pretty slim.
Yeah, hopefully the guy did just, run off. Is unlikely as that is, because people have said as much, but hopefully he is out there somewhere still, just, maybe he got run out of town with the debt supposedly that he owed someone.
And that's always a theory too. He wasn't from Maine originally, so
okay.
He's just somewhere else.
Where was he from originally?
I think he was from New Hampshire. His dad is involved in, or had the charity in New Hampshire and Rhode Island, so could be familiar with both of those areas.
Yeah.
But there's never been a sighting of him since 2004, right? That one in Jackson in September, I think. But
no, no one's seen him or heard from him. Since the year he went missing, unfortunately. But he's also one that isn't really kept alive in media. I don't know. Everything just kind of went quiet on him after. I think the last article I found was only about 5 years after he disappeared, and that was it.
Yeah, when you and I started talking about this the other night, I didn't really know a lot about this case. I'd heard the name maybe, but I didn't know as much detail as you're giving us now. I mean, I guess it is available out there, but it's almost like covered up. It's not talked about like you mentioned.
Yeah, it's definitely, and they don't have any 100% reports. Even the different newspaper articles are conflicting on just the simplest details. So again, it seems a little fishy to me.
Yeah, play on words there.
A little fishy.
Yeah, not throwing John Fishman under the bus, but
right. So, I know people have different opinions of this, but do you know if they ever had psychics involved in the case?
I don't personally know if there's been any psychics involved in the case, but I do. I know I've seen at least a couple comments from people claiming to be psychics with their own theories. But their own theories are pretty similar to what I could come up with. So I'd be interested in getting something a little more solid. I don't think that that's something that his family really entertained, though.
Oh, okay. I mean, I think at this point, it's not being solved. Anything's worth a shot.
Oh yeah, it's definitely worth a shot, and I would be open to going and searing for him tomorrow. I know there's probably not anything left, but
I actually got to work tomorrow.
Oh geez, maybe some other time.
How about in the spring when it warms up a little bit? Maybe on the anniversary.
When it warms up a little bit. Good idea.
Why don't we try to do that on the anniversary of his disappearance?
Good idea.
On the anniversary of his disappearance, we'll go up there and
not a bad idea.
Take a look around, at least, and maybe post it to our page or whatever, a quick video just to keep him in the news and active.
Yeah,
that's what gets us stuff. People working on this stuff, right, is talking about it, getting that stuff out there.
Right. Oh yeah.
Unfortunately, they're not listening to the guy they're claiming to be crazy, so someone else has to do something to get attention to it.
And to get the facts out there, like you said, you didn't realize how crazy this all was, and it really is intriguing. So yeah, I think people would get involved if they knew about it more.
Right.
Yeah, and this isn't one of those 60-year-old cases. This is something that was fairly recent.
Yeah.
Do you know if
just an average guy? Yeah.
When they searched the van, did they ever find anything, blood or anything like that? Any signs of foul play, or did they just say, nope, nothing to see here, folks?
From what I have read, it sounds like they didn't even look for blood or anything. That was something that's not mentioned anywhere. They found his car. That's it. That's as much as is mentioned. And I heard that his keys and his phone were in the car. One report says that the police actually used his phone to call his father. So we know for a fact that they had the phone.
But now they're claiming they don't have the phone, right?
Right. Yeah. Yep. So it'll be interesting if that shows up somewhere.
Jeez.
Yeah,
it's so hard to try and get information for something like this, right? When the potential guilty party might have hold all the cards in their hand.
Yeah, and that's
where
another reason.
Where do you even go if they really did it, right?
It's one of those cases. It's almost, I don't want to get too involved with it either, because just reading what's happened to other suspect or other witnesses, it's a little bit unnerving.
They've died of natural causes.
Right. Yeah.
That's what the coroner
All
said
of
at
them.
least.
No, there's definitely more that will come to light, I think.
Hopefully, right?
I don't know how stuff can stay a secret in this state.
Right. And, it's mind-blowing that 16 years later someone won't just come forward and say what they know.
Right. Especially after half of the people that might be involved have passed away. Yeah, I don't know.
Well, they potentially even had a confession, right? But we'll just ignore that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure what more you could do if someone confesses oh, this is the body and I know who did it or I did it, whatever,
Yeah, I think that they claimed on that one that he'd been paid, that David Lynn Scott had been paid to confess.
So it's not even worth looking into.
Right, yeah.
We just distrust this guy so much. He's a loon. Don't listen to him.
Right. Yeah, so it's a tough case.
Yeah, for sure. What could have this kid become? 28 years old, had his whole life ahead of him. It's just heartbreaking.
It really is, yeah. And it's one of those cases that even if he was involved in drugs or not, it doesn't mean he wasn't a human, doesn't mean he didn't have family.
Right.
Just because his father's not necessarily actively looking for him doesn't mean he doesn't care. It's a sad story. And
that's well said, because you see a lot of that, especially in this state where, a drug addict goes missing, nobody gives a shit. But a teacher goes missing and they pull out all the stops and the entire state shuts down to try to find her.
Right. So there was a recent case where a woman was missing, and then once they revealed she had mental health problems, she kind of faded from media. And
not worth finding now.
Yeah, it's just, she must have gone away on her own then,
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's really sad. So that's why I I try to get involved as much as I can.
Yeah, that's kind of why we're doing it too. Be a voice for those that don't have a voice anymore.
Yeah, I think it's great what you guys are doing because I've always wanted to do something like that, but it's tough to find people to talk to, family members. Some of them have just been through too much to want to talk about it, I guess.
Yeah, and that's kind of the problem too, right? Is you want to ask questions and see what they know, see if they can give some information to let other people know about it, but you don't want to pressure too much or dig up too much that's gonna bear down on them.
Yeah, it's opening wounds.
Right.
Yeah, it's really tough.
All right, Amanda. Well, we appreciate your time tonight.
Yeah,
yes,
no
very
problem.
much so.
I hope
Yes,
well,
thank
thanks
you
for
again.
having me. Anytime I can help.
All right. Have a good night.
Yeah.
Yeah, you too. I'll see you around.
All right. Stay tuned for our next podcast. What happened to Ayla Reynolds? Missing since December 17th, 2011. If you have more information about tonight's case, contact the Maine State Police at 1-800-452-4664.
Or reach out to us on our Facebook page at Locating the Lost. You can also leave us a voice message on Anchor FM. The link can also be found on our Facebook page. Thanks for listening.
Williams led investigators to Alabama this week.
So we have some breaking news from Florida. An arrest has been made in
Tonight,
connection.
after years of agony, a glimmer of hope for the family.
Investigators spent hours searching through this house off Pennsylvania Avenue.
What could be a major development in the search for missing Alabama teenager.
Tonight, a stunning twist in the search for Taylor.
Somebody out there knows something.
They want to lay him to rest their way, not by somebody else's way.